The Manilow Method podcast is a production by Logan Allen and me, Barry Harris. Now, let's start the show.
Hello, world. I'm Logan Allen. That's Barry Harris. Welcome to the Season 2 finale of the Manilow Method. We're so happy you're joining us here today, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or you're listening on your preferred streaming platform. We are so happy you're here. We're talking about a fantastic album today. I've been so looking forward to this conversation. We are talking about 2Nights Live. This was recorded on the 2002 live tour promoting both Here at the Mayflower and Ultimate Manilow, the greatest hits compilation, which, by the way, just recently came out on vinyl. Go pick that up if you haven't already. So, 2Nights Live, 2-disc, phenomenal live album. I absolutely love this album, and in fact, I've probably listened to this live album more than I've listened to the live album from 1977. Nobody come after me for that, but it's just, I'm young, and this is more my speed because I love the Mayflower. This came out in 2003. It came out the year after, and it is just, it's fantastic. It was only released on CD right here. I'm stealing Barry's script right here, but it was only released on CD. And it's 2 discs of banger after banger after banger. There's so many good songs. There's all the hits, and there's all the Mayflower songs from this tour, which is just, it's so fulfilling for me to listen to this. So, Barry, you were around when the Mayflower was new, when Ultimate Manilow was new, as well as 2Nights Live was new. So, what do you remember? Do you remember this thing rolling out?
I most certainly do. This was the time of my life. So let's set the stage for what was happening in Barry Manilow's career. In 2001, Barry Manilow released what I think Logan and I both consider to be his magnum opus, and that is the studio album Here at the Mayflower. It was his first all-original album since Paradise Cafe in 1984, and it reunited Barry Manilow with all of his beloved and legendary collaborators, each one of them contributing songs, where each song is about a life behind a fictional apartment building. Every track is about somebody's life behind closed doors. And of course, there's so much that we can say about this album, but we're talking about the tour that promoted Here at the Mayflower. And it was originally going to be a relatively brief run, a promotional tour for the album. And I got to see this tour on this very first leg at the Bob Carpenter Center in Newark, Delaware. And it is one of the top 5 Manilow shows of all time for me, because I got to see him perform pretty much almost half of Here at the Mayflower songs in the second act. There were 2 acts, a first act of a lot of hits, and then a second act that starts with a big sequence of Here at the Mayflower songs. But something really significant happened in the middle of the tour, and that is Ultimate Manilow, a compilation CD released by his old record label Arista Records, because Here at the Mayflower was on a brand new label for Barry Manilow, Concord Records, but his old label Arista released a greatest hits compilation, and to everybody's shock and surprise, except for us the fans who really love Barry Manilow music, this compilation album, Ultimate Manilow, debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200. It was a shocker because Barry Manilow had not had a top 10 charting album in quite a while. And so what happened was there was this sudden resurgence of interest in Barry Manilow music. So this tour that this particular CD, 2Night Live, comes from was expanded to meet the sudden demand in people wanting to see Barry Manilow live in concert. So that first show at the Bob Carpenter Center in Newark, Delaware was a theater, more intimate, but yet when it came to the summer and the tour came back around, they went to Philadelphia to the Mann Music Center, and they played for 2 whole nights, and he packed them in. It was the most amazing thing to see him in the spring and then to go back again in the summer and see him come back around. And I saw both nights at the Mann Music Center. So I saw 3 shows on this tour. So this tour was a very special memory, and this particular live album is that memento of that amazing tour. So we're going to go through this live album, why we love it so much, highlight all of the great songs and performances that are captured here. But this was a moment of a lifetime for me personally. This is the part where Barry Manilow's performances really reached me in a way that I had not expected. And I feel that this tour and the album Here at the Mayflower is probably the biggest driver for me being where I am today, an artist, a musician. I think that's all because of this. And I'm so glad that this tour was so well preserved on this 2 Nights live disc. So the last thing I'll say before I send it over to you, Logan, is that when this album was about to come out, Barry Manilow wrote a letter to his fans, and what he specifically said was, do not listen to this live album while driving your car, because you are going to crash it. You're going to be just jamming and dancing to all these songs that you're going to run right off the road. So that's what I particularly remember, and it did not disappoint. As soon as I put this disc in, I loved it immediately, and to this day, I listen to this live album all the time. And just like you, Logan, I think I might have listened to this live album maybe just a little bit more than the others. I've listened to all of them, but this one probably got played the most by me.
That's shocking, since you're such a massive fan of Live on Broadway, I have to say. So, as Barry started going on about there, not only are we talking about this album and the songs on this album, we're going to try to talk about the tour as a whole, because even though there's 2 discs full of music here, there are still a lot more songs that were done on this tour that are not represented on this. So at the end of this conversation, however far in the future that may be, we're going to talk about all the other songs that were done on this tour as well. But let's start by doing something that I love to do, is I open the CD and I take out the jacket. It's not just an image. It's not just a photo book. It's got credits, it's got songs, it's got names, and I love to read names, as we know, regardless of how bad I sometimes butcher pronunciations. So we're going to talk about some people that were involved in the making of this. A lot of this crew is the live crew that was on the road from city to city with Manilow on this tour in 2002. This specific album was produced by Barry Manilow and Gary Keefe. The show itself was written by Barry Manilow and Ken and Mitzi Welch. Ken and Mitzi Welch is a name that is so legendary, not only in the Manilow community, but just in the pop culture community. They touched so many different people's careers that they're just fantastic people to be associated with. I can only imagine how much fun it was for Manilow and his team to work with them on crafting all of these shows. Set design by Seth Jackson, lighting design by Seth Jackson. He was pulling double duty on this. Sound design by Ken Newman, who is still the sound man for Manilow to this day. Wardrobe design by Philip Dennis. Choreography by Kai Brackett. That's interesting to note. There were no supporting singers on this tour. The band sang, but there were no, for those of you who know live Manilow nowadays, Kai Brackett, Melanie Taylor, Muffy Hendrix, none of those names were on stage for this tour. So Kai Brackett still did some choreography and special material by Larry Ambrose. Now the band, here is the band. Steve Welch is the MD, keyboards and vocalist, that's music director. Percussion is Mike Fau, I'm going to say. Fa, something like that. It's F-A-U-E, Mike F. Michael Lent on guitar, who is still with Manilow to this day. Ron Pedley on keyboards, who is still with Manilow to this day. And now this is interesting. There are 2 bass players credited on this album. Stan Sargent is one of them. He's still playing live with Manilow to this day. There's a common theme here. A lot of names stick around over the years with Manilow. And then another bass player named Larry Antonino is credited. So considering this is a live album, they're live on tour, it's interesting that 2 bassists are credited. That might suggest maybe some overdubbing was done later. Who knows? That's speculation. We're not even 10 minutes in and we're speculating. Drums is Russ McKinnon. Fantastic drummer. He was with Manilow for forever. I do believe this was Russ's first tour with Manilow, and it's so cool. On Bandstand Boogie, Manilow goes, "Play the drums, Russ." So on his first tour and on his first release with Manilow, his name is forever immortalized on this album. The Reeds are Ed Joff, Dan Willis, and John Winder. Trumpet is David Rogers, David Gale, and Larry Lunetta. Trombone is Keith O'Quinn, Herb Besson, and French horn is Lisa Pike. There's all sorts of names here of directors and engineers. If you would like to know more about who was involved in this, we're not going to take too much more time doing this, but I highly recommend you go out and get this, because as I mentioned before, this album was only released on CD. If they ever released this on vinyl, you better believe I would be among the first to purchase it. I'm sure Barry would as well. Shall we do this, Barry?
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to start with letting the cat out of the bag, and we're going to pop some balloons here. 2Nights Live is really a compilation of 3 concerts. Done in Holmdel, New Jersey in August of 2002. There were 3 nights. But it kind of turned into 2 days. Because on the first night, this is such a legendary moment in this the history of this tour. The Great Flood of New Jersey happened the first night of this little weekend run. Right before Manilow went on, the heavens opened up and a monsoon washed through the PNC Center in Holmdel, New Jersey. And in fact, we've actually talked to a lot of you who were there for that and have detailed your experience. In fact, we have a friend named Mary who was there, and we got to talk to her a little bit ago about what it was like to be in the middle of that flood. Let's cut to a clip of that.
It was a beautiful day, sun shining, very nice. We had indoor seats, but there were a lot of lawn seats also. And about, was it Dave Koz or
Curtis Steiger.
Curtis Steiger opened, just, a little bit. And then just before Barry came out, there was this huge cloud that just enveloped the whole theater.
Wow.
And we're looking, and there's, let's delay it just a little bit to see what happens. It started to sprinkle. And then all of a sudden there was this big clap of thunder and the skies opened up.
Wow.
And it was just wind and rain. And we found out later it was a mini tornado that came through.
Wow.
Mini tornado. And there was an opening in the theater. There were no seats underneath because there was like a big drain there. Mm-hmm. And that relieved the pressure on the roof when it snowed. It was like Niagara Falls.
Wow.
Everybody had to be moved out of that whole section because between the wind and the rain, everybody was getting soaked.
Wow.
The stage got soaked, instruments got wet, and the spectators who were in seats had to keep their feet up because the landscaping mulch was literally rolling down the aisles in rivers piled up against the stage. That had to be 3 feet of mulch.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had to call the concert. There was no way those electric instruments were going to play. We'd have a lot of lightning indoors with that. But it was very interesting. And the next day, they announced that he would be doing a makeup on that. This was a Friday night. It was Sunday afternoon. And when he got on stage, he says, "This is unreal." He says, I haven't done a matinee, and I can't tell you how long. And we just had the best time. It was hot, but it was great.
I can only imagine what it would have been like to be standing in a pool of trash and all sorts of mud and dirt. I can't even imagine that. But I think everybody survived. I don't think there were any casualties. Everybody made it out. And the next day, they did what was supposed to be the second show, but it turned into the first. And on Sunday, they added a matinee show to make up for the cancellation on Friday. So they did Saturday night, a Sunday afternoon show, and Sunday night show. So 2 nights live is really 2 nights plus 1 day live. That being said, throughout this discussion, we are going to speculate each song which show we might think it was pulled from, because we do believe that through all of our research and all of our correspondence with people that were there, we think that we have put together the 3 full set lists from these shows. Now, there were some songs that were done at all 3 shows, Mandy and Copacabana and I Write the Songs. We can't really speculate where those would be pulled from just because they were done every night, but all of the other songs were done only once or twice on this run, so we can really narrow down which shows a lot of these came from. So, by the way, if you were there at one of these shows, or 2 or all of them, please write to us, themanilowmethod@gmail.com. Message us on social media. We'd love to hear about your accounts of this fantastic weekend. We open with an opening that is phenomenal for this tour. It is Ultimate Manilow in a nutshell. It's a medley of 4 songs called the Gonzo opening. It's Ready to Take a Chance Again, Daybreak, Somewhere in the Night, and This One's for You. Now, I've read some fan accounts online that because of the high percentage of this medley being ballads, in person, it might have had a tendency to drag. I don't know. I wasn't there on the tour. Listening to it on a CD, I don't feel that it drags at all. I think it's a fantastic way. Coming out, you're doing a quadruple punch to the gut with 4 hits right away. I think it's a fantastic way to open. And I am going to speculate that this medley, at least the majority of it, was drawn from the Sunday matinee show. The Sunday matinee show has actually been shown on Manilow TV, the concert subscription service where you pay once a month to watch a bunch of concerts from throughout his career. The Sunday matinee is one of the shows we've seen on there, and listening to it and listening to 2 Nights live in preparation for this, his dialogue and his different inflections that he changes from night to night are the same. So I am going to be very confident in saying that the Gonzo opening was ripped from the Sunday matinee show. What a fantastic way to start. The fact that he was able to do this in the middle of the afternoon and still put this much power into it and still have to do a show later in the night is crazy. Barry, what did you think of the Gonzo opening for this tour?
Yeah, it's such a classic way to open the show, and this was retained in the show for so long. For at least the next decade or so, this was a solid opener. The Gonzo opening would really just hit audiences with hit after hit after hit. And it's a good way to get the audience fired up because there's so much material to get to. And I like the way that Manilow over the years has found these unique ways to mash up songs to present as much material as he physically can within the allotted time, and you hit so many great points on the discography, and just, every song, is going to be special to at least somebody out there in the audience who has a special memory. So he already has you, really having all of these nostalgic feelings immediately into the show. I mean, I think this was such a solid opening. I remember seeing this live and have seen him sing this on stage many times subsequently later on in the decade. And it's a very powerful opening, and it makes sense that he kept it for so long in his act.
So, rolling with the punches here, the first 6 tracks on this are from the 70s. So, as we can see, as the tour progressed, he was leaning a little more into the Ultimate Manilow side of things more than he was the Mayflower side of things. And that, excited some people, disappointed some people. You know, you can't please everybody. But the first part of the tour was Heavy Mayflower. The second part of the tour was Heavy Ultimate Manilow. I mean, looks like we made it. Can't Smile Without You, Bandstand, Boogie, Mandy, Even Now. All of these songs were massive hits. And the fact that he's able to come out with a medley of 4 songs, they were all hits, and still have dozens of songs to follow that intensity just shows how phenomenal his back catalog is. I mean, looks like we made it. Every now and then it's been taken out of the show, but overall it's remained the pretty constant over the years. And then Can't Smile Without You, I mean, I'm not sure there's a more iconic Can't Smile Without You moment than what is documented on this album. And in fact, this Can't Smile Without You comes from the Sunday Matinee performance. They're starting off this album with a lot of pulls from the Sunday Matinee show. He got 2 kids to come up on stage and sing Can't Smile Without You with them. They were named Brittany and Jimmy, and their mom was in the audience, and they had this sign, and they came up on stage, and Manilow was just so amazed that 2 kids knew the words to Can't Smile Without You. He called their mom up on stage, and they all sang it, and it's such a fantastic moment. The fact that we've seen it on Manilow TV and we have it on this album is so fantastic. And if you know Brittany or Jimmy, or you know where they're at now, have them get a hold of us. That'd be pretty fun. Talked about their experience there, see how much they remember of it. So
it would be amazing.
Right? One of the other things we want to talk about with Can't Smile Without You is, aside from the One Night Live, One Last Time tour in 2004, this tour was one of the last times where the Can't Smile Without You duet was decently common. It didn't happen every night on this tour, but this was the first tour where you started to see it kind of being a little phased out. There were some nights he didn't even sing Can't Smile Without You. So to have a fantastic duet like this documented is perfect for this album, and it's great that it was one of the last ones of this tour too. I think a duet like that with a couple of youngsters, I say youngsters, I just turned 20, with a couple of youngsters is pretty awesome. So let's see, we're gonna try to speculate some more here as we go on. Bandstand Boogie was only done on show 1 and show 2. It was not done on show 3, so it was pulled from one of those. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe it was pulled from show 2, just because they've pulled so much from show 2 up to this point. And of course, that was the song I mentioned where he shouts out Russ McKinnon on drums. Then we get to track 6 on disc 1, which is Mandy. This is a partial version of Mandy. There is no second verse in this. He does a verse and a chorus, and then he goes straight to the bridge, which was a pretty common arrangement for this time. Other than that, it's pretty much a standard arrangement of the song. He does the ending where he holds the you out at the end for a million years. And that leads into, I think, one of Barry and I's favorite moments from this tour. When he starts Even Now, he kind of connects Mandy and Even Now, because he just finished Mandy, and then he goes into Even Now, and then he adds this, I need you, and he kind of connects the lines into Even Now, and it's gorgeous. Barry, give us some words on that.
Yes. So, talking about Can't Smile Without You, Brittany and Jimmy did such a fantastic job on this duet. You know, another thing that's interesting about Can't Smile Without You is that he also performed it in a solo arrangement, where he performed it in the key of G flat and performed it in its entirety and didn't invite an audience member to come up on stage with him. But you know, there actually might be a practical reason that as the tour went on, Can't Smile Without You was less and less frequently performed as a duet with an audience member, because, like I said at the beginning, it started off in small theaters and then it went to big outdoor arenas. And when I was there at the second night at the Mad Music Center, he picked an audience member to sing Can't Smile Without You, but there was a problem. there was no physical way to get them onto the stage from the front of the house, that the person he picked had to be escorted all the way to the backstage area and all the way back through and onto the stage. So because of that, he had to vamp for must have been a minute or two, just making small talk with the audience, waiting for this person to be brought up on stage. So actually, that might be the biggest reason why for this tour, Can't Smile Without You was less frequently performed as a duet, is that certain venues just may not have been built for it, and it might have been impossible to get somebody onto the stage quickly, because otherwise this eats up a lot of time in the show. So that's a practical reason. But to talk about a song like Even Now and Mandy, this combination, it was a knockout. I remember hearing that done for the first time when I was at the Bob Carpenter Center in Newark, Delaware. My mom and I were sitting next to each other, and when he started to play Even Now and he sang, I need you, my mom and I looked right at each other and went, whoa, that was a moment. It really was a moment, and I'm glad that they picked one of the performances on this tour where he was still doing that. So it's a great performance.
All right, folks, buckle up. We're reaching a potential opus here on this first disc, talking about the title track from Manilow and Bruce Sussman's musical Harmony. On this tour, he was singing a couple of songs from Harmony pretty much every night. There was some variation here and there, but a lot of the nights he was doing at least one or two songs from Harmony. And this is the title track. I will say right now, when I purchased this album 5 years ago, it probably had to be at this point, this was the first time I ever heard the song Harmony, was this version on 2Nights Live. And it's important to mention that this is the first time people heard Manilow sing the song Harmony. A couple years later, it came out on the Scores album. His vocal arrangement of it came out on the Scores album. But this was the first taste of Harmony, was Manilow doing this song on the tour. And we've seen it on Manilow TV. It's such a cool production. Shout out Seth Jackson on the lighting. But Barry, talk about the harmonists and how they brought them to life on this.
Yes, so this is actually a notable moment in the Barry Manilow touring history. This is the first time that we prominently hear a backing track to play along to the performance. That's common nowadays. If you see any artist, I promise you every single artist, with some exceptions that you see, are going to have some sort of backing track or at least a click track. But in this case, the reason we're hearing a backing track is that Barry Manilow went into the studio and recorded each of the vocals of each of the comedian harmonists. So he is singing with himself on stage. He is singing the background vocals, all of the parts of the comedian harmonist. He sang all of the parts, and right before he went into it, now it's not preserved on this live CD, but I particularly remember, especially at the Bob Carpenter Center in Newark, Delaware, when he was still just really heavy on Here at the Mayflower and Harmony, he actually introduced every member. He sang the bass, ba, the baritone, ba, and even the soprano, ba, and he went through and explained all the parts, and then he went ahead and he sang with himself. But another segment that's actually not on this disc is that he then went on to do a skit with the song It's a Miracle, and he brought out a tape recorder and he told a story of what it was like to record his first demos. He told the audience that he actually ran out of money to hire singers, so he decided to sing the background vocals by himself. So he demonstrated with a song like It's a Miracle and showing the three parts of harmony and show what it was like to overdub. And basically, this is he was doing what Ed Sheeran was doing, what he's doing now. Barry Manilow did it first. He was doing loop performances on stage for us to see. So that was very cool. So I remember that so vividly. And that, I was a young kid at that time, and that inspired my imagination. So here preserved for this live album is the performance of Harmony. But like I said, the context of him recording his own background vocals, that he made a bigger deal about that in the early part of the tour, and I love that. That's one of the most memorable moments for me. And again, this was my first time ever hearing Harmony on a live CD, and I loved it, and it got me so excited to see Harmony, even though that never came to pass. That's a long story we'll have to tell on another episode. But Harmony was, at that time in the early 2000s, was thought that it was going to perhaps head to Broadway. Of course, as you all know, it had to wait until the 2020s until it finally reached Broadway, and oh boy, is that an amazing, another magnum opus. We talked about Here at the Mayflower being a magnum opus, but also Harmony, magnum opus. He was on fire artistically at this particular moment in time.
Harmony's a magnum opus. Here at the Mayflower is a magnum opus. Here is our first taste of the Mayflower on this CD. It's Turn the Radio Up. Now, usually when this would be a 2-act performance on this tour, Turn the Radio Up would open the second act. To our knowledge, there was no intermissions in the New Jersey shows. We could be wrong about that, but we haven't seen anything to prove that. So this was kind of just in the middle of the show at this point, so it makes sense that this is kind of in the middle of the first disc. And I would like to speculate also, Harmony was only done at the first show in New Jersey, so it has to have been pulled from that. Turn the Radio Up, it was a staple. It was done at all 3 shows. However, I'm going to speculate that it was from the second show, the Sunday matinee, because the opening lines, everybody clap along, or you got to help me count it off. I swear I haven't seen it on Manilow TV in a little bit, but I swear I remember those lines of dialogue happening on the Sunday matinee show. So I'm going to speculate that Turn the Radio Up is from that performance. Now, I've seen some interesting thoughts when researching the Here at the Mayflower album specifically, saying that some people think that Turn the Radio Up is kind of an outlier on the album. We do know for sure it was one of the last songs written and recorded for the album. And I can kind of see an argument there, how it's just a different vibe than what's on the rest of the album. But to the people that don't like it for that reason, I think I might say there are so many different vibes on Here at the Mayflower. You've got Come Monday and Do You Know Who's Living Next Door, these kind of funky, groovy songs. Then you've got The Night That Tito Played, which is a Latin song, and I'm Coming Back really rocks. And it's like, why not have another song that has a different vibe to it? I think this song totally belongs on the Mayflower, and it's such a good live edition. If there was a song to play live from Here at the Mayflower, I think this was the one to spend time on. Barry, do you agree?
Yeah, Turn the Radio Up, that was a staple on this tour, and I could never get tired of hearing it because it's one of my favorite songs on Here at the Mayflower. I have to say that, you know, the live version departs quite a bit from the studio version in that you have the drum intro and then you have the repeated intro. Come on, everybody, open up your windows, turn on the music, and the clapping along and adding a horn arrangement. It really adds a whole new dimension to this song. I mean, the studio version itself is already such a joyous and happy recording, but to hear it live, it adds a whole new dimension to it. So I love the fact that it was one of the Mayflower songs that they chose to preserve on the live album, and one of the Mayflower songs that Manilow continued to sing into the summer, because as it got into bigger theaters, you would hear less Here at the Mayflower songs. But thank goodness, Turn the Radio Up was a staple throughout this entire tour.
Turn the Radio Up was done at all 3 shows. We can't really speculate except for those opening lines of dialogue that we think it was pulled from the Sunday matinee. The next show, we can pretty much guarantee it was pulled from the Sunday matinee because that is the only show in this weekend that it was done at. This is The Best of Me. We've yet to talk about this song on the podcast, so we're not going to go super deep into it. But the Manilow opens it by saying he's going to do a song that he only does on special occasions, and it's really the only way he feels he can say thank you for all of the support the fans have given him over the years. He has a few songs like that in his catalog. The Best of Me, The Best Seat in the House is another song that comes to mind. That's not featured on this, but it's a similar purpose. that he sings it live. So, Barry, the best of me. This is a great performance of it. It was only about a decade old at this point as far as being released in Manilow's catalog. So, what are your feelings on this particular live version of it?
Yeah, I love it. He still has the connection to this song because he has said that he felt so deeply connected to the song the moment that he first heard it, because Richard Marx had made a demo of it and Manilow heard it and he wanted to record it, but he assumed Richard Marx was going to use it for himself. And turns out a couple of years later, when Barry Manilow was putting the box set together, he decided to record it. And this is something that is particularly special for a lot of fans, because sometimes people have gotten letters backstage to Manilow asking if he could help them propose to their girlfriend. And when that would happen, this Best of Me would be the song that he typically would sing for them. And so, yes, he says in the dialogue that he only sings this song on special occasions, but he decided that this being the end of the tour and this being for all the audience members, because this was sung on show number 2, the Sunday matinee, this was a great thing to dedicate to all of the fans who had persevered, especially through that major weather event.
Right. Next is Weekend in New England, which is a staple to this day. This is a phenomenal performance of this song. It was done at all 3 shows on this weekend, so we can't really speculate where it's pulled from. I can't even speculate if it was pulled directly from the matinee show, because there wasn't enough for me to glean that. So it was done at all 3 shows, which shows that he was really feeling this song. And something that we found over the years is this song has been featured in so many different places in the show before. We have record of it opening shows. We have record of it closing shows. We have record of it closing the first act. We have record of it opening the second act. We have record of this song doing so much throughout every decade. I really am not sure, unless his voice isn't feeling it, I can't really remember a time where this song wasn't on a tour's set list draft. I really don't remember a time since he put this out that this song was not featured in some form. I mean, even I Write the Songs has been taken out at some points, but Weekend in New England has stayed. I think that's a testament to how strong this song is. Barry, briefly give some comments on his vocal performance here.
Yeah, we were reading some old Barry Grams where Manilow had a column where fans could write in questions and he would answer them. And someone asked him if there was a particular song that he felt best showcased himself vocally, and he named Weekend in New England as his choice, and that makes total sense. And I will say, I always use Weekend in New England in every show to be the barometer, how I measure how great any given concert is, because of all the songs that are in the catalog, Weekend in New England has the most room for improvisation, for feeling, and more so than any of the other songs. And clearly, by using that standard, this performance that you hear is another phenomenal performance. And this song does not fail to get the crowd on their feet. In fact, I remember in just the most recent tour, where I've seen several of Barry Manilow's concerts, there were some shows where the audience members were stomping on the bleachers after this song was over. So it's been a staple in his act for a long, long time, and judging by this performance that you hear on 2Nights Live, there's no question why that is.
I can't think of many tours where this next song was as much of a staple as it is on this 2002 tour. The next song is Let Freedom Ring. For obvious reasons, Manilow being a New Yorker, the events of September 11th, 2001 were very impactful for him, and he used multiple moments in the show to pay tribute to the people from his hometown, and this song is no different. What a fantastic moment. And not only just such a fantastic song to include at the end of nearly every show. I mean, it was done at all the shows on this weekend that they pulled from. We can't really tell which show this was pulled from because they did it every night. what a fantastic way to kind of just put a period, not even a period, an exclamation point at the end of every show. And he had a fantastic choir. And if you'll bear with me for a second, I'll tell you the name of that choir. I know they were from New Jersey because they source local choirs. I mean, to this day, if there's a choir on stage, they are almost certainly locally sourced. And I think that's a great thing about what he does. Yes, the choir for this weekend was the New Jersey One Love Choir. They did a fantastic, that's a great word. They did a fantastic, oh man, I'm losing all my ability to speak. They did a fantastic job on this song. I was combining all my words there for a second. They did a fantastic job on Let Freedom Ring on this CD. Man, I'm losing it. It's hot in here. Barry, are you losing it? Man, this is fantastic.
Oh, tell me. I can tell you about it. It's like 88 degrees right now, and I'm sweating buckets. So, yeah, you've got it tough. I've got it tough here, too.
This is fantastic. We're going to leave this in. I hope our audience enjoys us.
Okay, let's leave it in.
Making personal sacrifices for this show. We normally wouldn't leave that in. Anyway, Let Freedom Ring, fantastic song. I got to hear it live a few years ago for the first time. He did it in 2024 for a few months, and I got to hear it a few times on that run and was so excited to hear that live. It's always been one of my favorites. I remember as a kid watching him sing it on a Capitol 4th from the Capitol lawn in Washington, D.C. That's such a core Manilow memory for me, is actually watching that live on television as it was happening. So this song has always meant so much to me, and the fact that he used it in such a way in the show because it meant so much to him and the people of New York, I think that's a fantastic song to include on this compilation and on the tour as a whole. And that goes into the Miracle Reprise, which is also featuring the New Jersey One Love Choir. So Barry, this is a very gospel ending to a pop concert, I would say, and that's something that stayed in Manilow shows. The It's a Miracle Reprise kind of having this gospel feel to this day is the closer of all the shows. So why do you think that out of all the endings he's tried for over 20 years now, the endings lean towards gospel?
Yeah, I think that the idea of it ending on a gospel number is to leave you feeling uplifted. That's really what it is. And Let Freedom Ring, I was there, and like you said, for obvious reasons, this was done to pay tribute to all the brave people, because we were also, there was troops that were fighting overseas, and I could go on and on. But I know we have some viewers that are younger and who were not alive during that time. And so I can say it was a very weird time when that events happened in 2001, and there was just a heaviness over everything. It was really heavy for a long time. But concerts like these Manilow concerts, they were such relief. And at this moment, I think, was really cathartic to just have a moment of feeling safe and feeling brave and feeling proud to be an American, because they would bring the flag down. And, of course, Let Freedom Ring is such a great patriotic song. And I got to just say, just listen to his vocal performances. This is maybe one of his greatest live vocal moments. You hear all of these great vocal riffs, and he would do this night after night. And Let Freedom Ring, and especially bringing that choir out so you can actually see it, that is an experience. And one of the things that's remarkable is that in 2025, for what was the last Philadelphia concert, I was there for that, he had a surprise encore, and it was Let Freedom Ring. And he chose to do that because he had premiered the song in 1987 in Philadelphia. So every time I get to see this live, it really touches me deeply. And then then going into It's a Miracle Reprise, I will never forget what you hear on the album. All you hear is during the bridge, "Go Barry, go Barry." He's just dancing with the choir members on the stage. You don't see that, but I remember that, and I just remember being there and loving that particular moment of the show. And I think I was one of the audience members who was instinctively chanting with them, "Go Barry, go Barry, dancing in the street." Oh, it was a great time. And but as I said, you won't see it because it's only represented on the audio, but every time I'm listening to the CD, I flash back to what it was like to be there and watch him just dancing on the stage. What a light moment that was, especially again in what was a very dark and heavy time.
So I want to shed some light here on some thoughts that some Manilow fans had with the release of this. As we were doing some research into this album, I found some old posts about fans' thoughts when it first came out, specifically some fans who were there for these shows in person. They were not super pleased with how this live album turned out because they thought that a lot of things were done in post to this album. They thought that there was some editing done, and in fact I remember one person saying they thought the editing kind of sucked the energy out of the performance, which in my opinion, this is kind of a car crash album. If you listen to it on the highway, you might end up speeding too much. So personally, I don't feel that lack of energy on this album, but that was a concern of some fans in real time of this album coming out. And my response to that I will give is nothing, I repeat, nothing will ever replace the energy of being in person at a Barry Manilow concert, regardless of if you see it on Manilow TV later, if it comes out as a live album. Nothing will replace the excitement of being in the room or in the bleachers for that show. So no matter how much editing gets done to an album in post, I still think these live albums are a phenomenal representation of what the tours were like, even if I wasn't there. I think they're still a fantastic representation of what the tours are like, and I seriously think they are the next best thing to actually being in the room. For people like me that weren't alive for this tour, this is a fantastic album. So regardless of what you think the differences are or how much editing was done, I really don't think there's any point in talking about that, because the tour was fantastic and this compilation is fantastic. They're both two completely solid works of art, and I wanted to give a piece of my mind to those people. No, I'm kidding. So we're going to talk about the last two songs on this, and this is fantastic that these are the last two songs on this first disc, because these are the only audio released versions of Manilow singing these two songs. The first one is called You're There, which I think is one of the most emotional songs that Manilow has ever put his touch to. And the next one is We Live on Borrowed Time, which these two, back to back, what a sucker punch to end the show. Such an emotional moment. And in fact, these two songs were only done at the third show in New Jersey. So these songs ended the tour. It was like I said, the period at the end of the sentence. These songs ended the tour. And to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, they never showed up again after this. I don't think we have any official record. I thought I saw at one point somebody said he did it at the Hilton. However, I did some more looking into that, and that person was just listing songs they wished they could hear. So I don't think they happened at the Hilton in the Music and Passion era. If you heard it there, please tell us. We'd love to know. But as far as we know, what we hear on this CD is the most modern performance of both of these songs. So Barry, talk about who wrote these songs and what's kind of funny that these two songs go together in Manilow's show.
Yes, so these two songs, You're There and We Live on Borrowed Time, were written by a songwriter named David Friedman. And clearly, Manilow really admired his songwriting. One of the notable credits for David Friedman was that he was producing and writing for an artist named Nancy Lamont. She was a cabaret singer from the 1990s who rose to national prominence, and sadly her life was cut short due to cancer, and that was very, very sad. But she left behind an incredible legacy of music, notably David Friedman's music. And We Live on Borrowed Time, I believe, was recorded by Nancy Lamont, and I think it was released posthumously. And interestingly, there's another David Friedman song that is not here on this particular disc, and I don't think was performed on this tour, but there's a song called I'll Be Here With You that Manilow sung live in the 90s a lot. And that one was beloved by fans. And so 3 David Friedman songs that I can think of off the top of my head that Barry Manilow has performed semi-occasionally in concerts throughout the 1990s, but here we are representing You're There and We Lived on Borrowed Time. Again, this really touches upon the heaviness of this time. There was a lot of feeling of loss, and especially because this show was in New Jersey and was fairly close to New York City, there was a lot of people that were possibly dealing with personal grief. And You're There was a song that, you know, I've read some accounts that this song was first performed by Barry Manilow in 1998 in the United Kingdom, and it was sung on the occasion of the passing of Princess Diana. And so he was singing a song that was about dealing with grief of somebody that has been lost. And then We Live on Borrowed Time is a lot more broader, and We Live on Borrowed Time was sung more often on this 2002 tour. In fact, I did hear it performed live. I definitely remember hearing it in Newark. But here's something that's actually funny. Our friend Terry, who was actually attended these shows, told us something really funny, that even though We Live on Borrowed Time ends the disc and was the closing song of the show, he actually came back to the audience afterwards and said, I can't leave you like that. Let's do one more. And he did Can't Smile Without You as a solo rendition. So that's not on the live album. But yes, but it's represented to us as if We Live on Borrowed Time closed out the show. But it's quite unusual to see Barry Manilow close a show on a low note. It usually ends on a very uplifting high point. So that's quite unusual. But We Live on Borrowed Time, another amazing song that Barry Manilow makes his own. I'm so glad that we have this amazing live album to preserve this performance. And the words, they're really reassuring. That I love how it says at the very end, we live on borrowed time, so let's celebrate and sing as we walk bravely into the unknown, because we're going to be just fine. I think that I try to remember that a lot, especially as things happen in life. I always say, let's celebrate and sing as we walk bravely into the unknown.
And with a Could It Be Magic playoff, that is the end of Disc 1. They call it Night 1, but I think we just kind of proved it's kind of a hodgepodge of 3 nights. So this has run a lot longer than we thought it was going to, so we're going to put a pin in this for now. This is going to be the end of this conversation, and sometime in the near future, you're going to see part 2 of this conversation, which is going to talk about not only the second disc of 2 Nights Live, but also how many songs we think could have made a disc 3 for 2 Nights Live and made it 3 Nights Live. So, with that being said, I'm Logan Allen, that's Barry Harris. We are The Manilow Method. Reach out to us at themanilowmethod@gmail.com. The Manilow Method on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we will see you again very, 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 very soon for part 2 of this discussion about 2 Nights Live. We'll see you soon, everybody.